Amilcar Valencia, director of the migrant rights advocacy organization El Refugio. Welcome to Red Lines.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today in this program, and happy to share information about what we do and how things are going right now at the detention center and the programs we're running.
Yeah, let's get right down to it. As of April 10th, 5 detainees at Stewart Detention Center in Georgia have tested positive for COVID-19. What is the latest update you can offer regarding the situation?
So it's actually, I was just looking at the ICE's statistics for every detention center, and they are confirming 6 cases of detained folks at the detention center, plus 7 staff, and they don't have these statistics in their website. They're only tracking people detained and ICE employees or ICE staff, but not the employees of CoreCivic. And I wasn't able to find any information about CoreCivic specifically on their website. CoreCivic is not listing the staff that have been it has the virus or been contacted the virus. So that's a little hard to confirm in case there's more cases. We know for communications that were given, around April 10, is that there is 7 staff people at the detention center who had the virus. So you're talking about at least about 12 people, 13 people who have the virus in the detention center. And I guess the most frightening thing is another communication we got from our partners is that there were another 30 unconfirmed cases, which means that that official statistic might be 13, including staff and people detained. You might have a larger number of people, and of course, ICE only reports confirmed cases, I don't know, a week later or sometimes 2 weeks later. That we didn't know about the first 2 staff people until 10 days later. That were confirmed as cases. So it is something that we know officially. But the number can be much larger than what we know, at least at this point. Things are, for like the communications we're getting from people detained, their family members who called us, that they're, definitely super scared of, afraid of being in contact with, themselves. I mean, keep social distancing is something that is impossible to do in a detention setting because people are in very close contact. There is some of them are sharing a big open room with bunk beds. So they had to sit in tables when they go to the dining hall, and then they're not allowed to spread out. Like there is no, one person only be used for one person. They try to keep those tables full before they actually allow another person to sit in another table. So I think that's one of the most difficult things for people, that there is no way for them to, have a distance from each other, from volunteers, from people detained and the staff as well.
And you, as far as you know at this moment, ICE hasn't adjusted any of those policies or implemented any sort of social distancing plan?
Not that we know. No, that's something that they have not done. And I think it's the facility haven't done. I mean, they do. I was looking into the website again, and they talk about social distancing, from the employees, standpoint, but not from the people who are detained. So they probably are asking their employees to keep distance from each other and from people detained, but they're not doing the same for people who are detained. They are providing some PPE equipment to the staff, but not for people detained. So, that's the most difficult thing. That some of them, even if people have some symptoms like flu-like symptoms that are basically, symptoms for COVID-19, they are not, either isolated with, enough time or provided some medical attention at this point, until, a larger group of people are moved to a different, pods, or like segregating those larger group of people, which is something that had happened. So So the situation inside is very, very frightening, very scary for those who are living it, those who are detained, those who, don't know, what's going to happen to them. People who have underlying conditions, people who have, diabetes or, heart problems are still detained. People who are over 60 years old are still detained. So all those things that the CDC has given people as a guideline for you should not have any contact with anyone at all are not being followed by the detention standards, by immigration and by the employees at the court, the detention center at Stewart.
And give us an idea of who these people are trapped inside of Stewart Detention Center. Have any of them even been charged with any crime? And give us some details of the horrific conditions they live under when it comes to especially hygiene.
Stewart is one of the largest immigration detention centers in the United States. Is the largest in the Southeast. It has the capacity to detain more than 1,900 people, and it's been in operation since 2006 when opened up or when they got a contract with Immigration Customs Enforcement to detain immigrants who are in the United States, either undocumented or have some documented issues or are apprehended at the border. And immigrants are sent to different facilities, and Stewart is just one of those more than 200 facilities across the United States. So you might have people detained at Stewart who is, if there is people who have been detained in the interior, folks who have been living in the United States, in the 3 states, Georgia and the Carolinas. So people who've been here for a long time, sometimes more than 10 years, who have loved ones who have roots in the community, who are active members, who work, who do everything to provide to their families, but because of their immigration status, when they come in contact with the local police or with an ICE raid, they are sent to different places. And Stewart is kind of one of the regional facilities where people are being sent. So again, you might have someone who was detained because they didn't have a driver's license in the state of Georgia or in other states that enforce such a detention of immigrants who don't have a license, or other offenses, and maybe for other minor offenses in detention, and because of that, immigration places a hold on them. They go through a database, and the local police might report them to Immigration Customs Enforcement, and that's how people ended up in detention. So you might have people who have just a minor infraction, or people like, let's say, people who are detained directly by immigration in a home raid or a workplace raid, people who never had any contact with the local law enforcement or federal law enforcement until ended up in a detention center like Stewart. The other part of the population is people who are detained at the border. So you might be detained at the border for many reasons, right? You may be crossing the border illegally, but then you're stopped, and then people are placed in different detention centers, and Stewart is just one of them. You might be an asylum seeker who are crossing the border and ask for protection, and the first thing that they do is put you in a detention facility while they figure out what happens with your case. Most likely, just for a few days in a facility along the border, and then they send you to many other places. So move around to different facilities. Stewart is one of those facilities. So again, you might have people who've been here for a long time, active members of their community, and that the only thing is in the records that they don't have a legal status or lack of documentation. And other folks who've been just crossing the border or presenting themselves at the border asking for protection and not being allowed that opportunity, or at least being free while they figure out the process for those individuals and being sent to the detention center. There's a small number of people that also have been transferred from other facilities, or like state facilities or federal facilities. So people who might ended up with sentences, but then because of their lack of a status, or because they lost their status because of a particular offense they committed, and they ended up being transferred to the detention center. So those I would say there are three types of people detained on immigration detention center like the Stewart.
And the conditions they're kept under once there, give us some details of what that's like.
Yeah, so I mean, and it varies from every detention center, and this is just not something that advocates, people who just wanted to make the point that the conditions are so bad, and for that reason, the detention center should be shut down or people should be allowed to be free. It's not just that we just wanted to make that case, which is important to make, but we know for experience, we know. Our Refugio has a strong presence at the detention center. We do visit with people who either their loved ones are not able to visit them because of the leave, not only in the southeast, throughout the southeast, but they might have loved ones in northeast, they might have loved ones in California, so they're not able to come and visit them, and they ask us to visit them. We also receive letters from them directly and ask us to do visits. So we bring people to a detention center every week. I think the minimum that people who we bring every week is about 20. So we do at least 20 visits per week in the detention center. And through those visits and through those letters, through those phone calls that we have with people, direct contact we have with them, we have learned about their conditions inside of the detention center. So it's not just anecdotally something that we hear, oh, this might be happening in the detention center. So it's something that we face and
directly from the source.
Yeah, that people know that the conditions are bad. The food is really bad inside of the detention center. If you get sick for whatever reason, either if you're a healthy person, but because you get sick because of the food, because of the dietary, restrictions you might have. The only thing that they sometimes provide in the facility as a medical remediation is, some pills like, ibuprofen, things like that for the pain. But if you need like a surgery, if you have more, underlying conditions that need more attention, people sometimes are left with no real treatment. And if they are transported to, let's say, Columbus, which is 45 minutes, a hospital in there, or Americas, which is another 45 minutes, most likely it's because this person is, in a very precarious situation medically. And that has been the case for several people. I mean, people have died in detention centers. There are at least two documented cases of people who died at Stewart. Recently, a man from Cuba, Julio Castro Guerrido, who died because he contracted pneumonia when he was detained at Stewart. And he was only 33 years old. And if you go to the CDC's statistics of who is more likely to die by pneumonia, if you are healthy, if you're 33 years old, your chances are very little. But because the precarious situation, and he was not providing the attention he needed at the time, he ended up dying, at the hospital. When he was taken, pretty much at the last minute. There are other folks. The first person who died at Stewart died because of heart complications. Another person who was taken to the hospital when it was too late. And there have been suicides, which is another problem in the detention centers. The conditions inside, and even if people know, even if the staff facility knows that this person might have some mental issues, people who already had an evaluation from a facility adequate, care for those folks. And recently, two folks, committed suicide inside of the detention center. The last person who died, this is recently in July last year, Pedro Arriago Santoya, a man from Mexico, who died under unknown circumstances. We just know that he was sick and was transferred to the hospital, and then he died, and ICE reported that. Detention center is immigration detention is lethal for a lot of people. People can die in a detention center because of the conditions, and that's something that we know for a fact. We're not coming up with the stuff. People are dying. People are desperate to be released now, especially with COVID-19. All the conditions that we have seen terms of the food, in terms of the treatment, in terms of the medical attention during COVID-19 had continued to deteriorate. Day by day. Every day we hear of things that comes from the detention center that are very alarming.
Can you explain the profit incentive behind Stewart and other detention facilities like it? How do they come to be? They're owned by private corporations, but get large government contracts. And there's a reason that they want to keep as many people in these beds as possible, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, profits move this country. And when you put profits before people, you ended up with systems that keep oppressing us, the minorities. And we see that in the detention center, immigration detention arena, for example, which is not something different than the very broken criminal justice systems that we have that keep, people of color in detention, incarcerated. This is unfortunately not something new. The immigration detention center, we see it more often, but it's not something that only happens in the immigration arena. It happens everywhere. Everywhere where there is a detention center, where is a jail, there is always a profit tied to, a profit incentive tied to the detention of individuals. In Stewart, for example, in immigration detention in general, immigration makes a contract with the county, and the county then contracts with the facility to run this detention center. They do this kind of triangulation to avoid more scrutiny from the public, I guess, but also to avoid contracting issues. And in general, immigration in general is spending about $135, $140 for every person detained. This is for male and female detention centers. And 72%, and this represents, annually more than $2.5 billion in detention of individuals. In these take different forms as well, in terms of there is also family detention centers, which are more costly to run because you have kids and you have women in those facilities, and then there is some programming that needs to happen and allow for that. So there's a little more expensive. I think it's more than $300, $320 for a family detention center, which in Georgia there are none. Every detention center here is either a female or a male facility. So the profit mode is what is driving the increase of detention throughout these years. In 1983, when Core Civic was founded as an organization. Core Civic is one of the for-profit corporation that detains people in the United States, and I guess internationally. There is an international organization. The rate of the amount of people that were detained at that time were less than 50 people per day. So the per day detention was less than 50 immigrants in 1983. In 1996, we're talking about between 5,000 and 6,000 people detained every day. In 2007, 2008, there wasn't a huge increase in the United States of legislation, local legislation. States started to, like Arizona, had this infamous Show Me Your Paper law, SB 1070, that basically allows the local authorities, the local police, the state troopers, to the sheriff, to enforce immigration law, which is something that only is enforced by the federal government. But then these years were kind of pivotal moments in the history of the United States when a lot of localities started to try to enforce or set laws to report people directly with immigration, or have a very direct collaboration with ICE. That's through 287G program, secure communities, and different programs that were created at that time. So, and then Congress came up with this idea of telling immigration that, yes, you have the job to enforce immigration law, but we're also going to give you the number of people that you can detain. And that number was 34,000 people. So even in 2006, 2007, we're talking about a high number of detentions. So from 1983, from detaining less than 50 people a day to 34,000 people a day. And wow. The worst thing that happened in those years is that Congress told basically ICE and DHS that we're going to fund 34,000 people, 32,000 beds per day, even if you're not able to detain those 34,000 folks. So you had to pay for those beds to be available in case you still, have the capacity to detain people. So detention started to ramp up across the United States. In every state, a lot of states, like Georgia, for example, passed a anti-immigrant law in 2011. Other states follow, and Alabama did the same. And then we're like, ICE was meeting that demand of 34,000, sometimes a little bit higher than that. And they started this game of making it as like, we actually don't have enough funds to detain people, so we need more funds. So we need to increase the number of beds available in order to, meet those demands that Congress is giving to ICE to detain people. So that's basically has been the case. After at the end of the Obama administration in 2016, we were like at the highest point of detention, detaining 41,000 people per day. That was a huge increase, from 1996 to 2016 in the detention arena. Right now, during COVID-19, I think we're talking about 38,000 people. But during the first 2 years of the Trump administration, there has been an increase. I mean, there was a system already built in place that what they're doing is just to ramp up everything that they can to detain more people. And the profit mode is what is behind. These larger corporations like CoreCivic, Geo have a lot of power to influence local legislation and influence Congress in Washington to pass, these kind of programs, these kind of laws to detain people who are here undocumented or have some issues with documents in the United States. They're making a lot of money. I mean, they're making billions of dollars every year in profits to detain more people. And as I mentioned during this administration, we even got to the point to detaining more than 52,000 people per day. And the case that they're doing now is that we don't have enough funds to detain everyone who needs to be detained or deport everyone who needs to be deported.
So then they need to ask for even more money.
Then are asking for, in 2021, they are going to be asking for, 60,000 beds. Wow. And this is going to be just a game where, you're putting a lot of people on the line, like the life of people are being treated as a commodity.
How has the outbreak of COVID-19 impacted your organization's ability to provide the programs it usually does? And what solutions does it believe would put an end to the suffering of people at Stewart Detention Center?
Yeah, it has created, difficulties for us to offer our services, even being open at our house. We have I think I mentioned this at the beginning, besides the hospital, besides the visitation part of our ministry, is to also offering a place to stay for families who visit their loved ones. So we have a house where, we can host 5-6 families every weekend at the house. We recently started a new program and hired a new staff person to assist people who've been released from detention, to offering a place to stay in Lumpkin while, figuring out their journey back home and their travel situation. And that was prior to COVID-19. And in everything, we had to basically, the house is closed because we're not able to be there. There's no, families can go and visit their loved ones. We are not allowed to do visits Even attorneys at this point are sometimes asked. I think even the court is changing that the attorneys now need to call in or do Skype calls for the hearings in the detention center. So no one there is no any other activity outside of employees of the detention center going in the facility.
And there's not much information coming out.
And it's that, of course, because we're not there, we're not doing visits, we're not hosting families because it's not, there's no way we could do it. I mean, we also felt very strong that in order to, kind of flatten in the curve, we need to follow the CDC guidelines in terms of having our house open would not help in that, capacity either. It would not be helpful. So we had to make the hard decision to close the house, but trying to readjust a few things in how we support people. So supporting people remotely, their families, if they're being released, we're working with other folks in the Atlanta area to make sure that we still provide support to them. And we have a campaign to write letters to people in detention. So at least that's one way we can keep in contact with them. We have been able to deposit money. We did 2 weeks ago, we deposit money into their phone accounts so they can either call their loved ones or keep in contact with us. And then just today, we just made a large, considerable deposit to people in our list. And we don't have everyone, detained at Stewart in our list. It's just a reduced number of people, a little less than 170 people at the moment. And just make, some deposits to their commissary account so they can either buy, again, phone minutes to call their loved ones, or if they need, have any need of, supplementing their meals from the commissary and things that they can get. They can do that from the money that we're making available for them. We know it's not that much, but we're still trying to keep in contact with them. We get calls from them. We hear about what happened, and their families are very active too in asking us and being connecting them with us, and give us information about what's happening in the detention center. But that's the situation. That's the reality. COVID-19 has influenced it, has changed everything that we do. But we're trying to keep, finding ways to be creative and keep supporting people, even in this situation. I think I mentioned conditions in terms of the food. We have heard that some of them are not getting enough meals, or their meals are not getting on time, being delivered on time to them, just because of the reality in the detention and the staffing issues right now with COVID-19, which is very, understandable. But again, the people detained are those who suffer the consequences of not having the appropriate, staffing at the facility and not providing, the basic care that people need in detention.
Amilcar Valencia, director of El Refugio. If people would like to find more information out about your organization and the work you do, where can they go?
Well, they can go to our website, Refugio at stewart.org, refugioministry.org. Our number is 229-234-9022. Or they can find us on Facebook, Refugio at Stewart, and other social media as well.
Thanks so much again, Amilcar, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.